Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, as you can say that basically we are covering the important topic from the polity point of view for various different competitive exams. Alright. And basically in this series we are going to continue with the new topic that you can see here. It is the Central Bureau of Investigation. Central Bureau of Investigation. Alright. And most of you known it as an CBI. Alright, so this lecture we are going to take on, you can say, on the very important organization of our country. Alright, and most of you are already aware about the name. Most of us seen this in the, you can say, in the newspapers, in the TV channels. Alright, and most of us are aware that whenever there is any tricky case, okay, of financial nature, of criminal nature, civil nature, then most of the times we have seen that the people start demanding the CBI investigation. Alright, so here we can say that the CBI is an important organization of our country. Alright, it is the organization which works when the other organizations couldn't work. Alright, so this is an important and this is also interesting. Okay, because right now we are going to unfold, or you can say we are going to fold the unfold prospects of the CBI that we haven't seen on the news channels, that we haven't find on the various social media sites. Okay, and now we will be able to understand why this organization is the organization about which the people generally demand it whenever the situation really turns bad. Got it? So let's move forward. So these are the topics that we are going to see in this particular series of the CBI, like the establishment of CBI, like the motto, mission and vision of CBI, like the organization of CBI, like the composition of CBI, like the functions of CBI, like the provisions of prior permission, like the CBI versus the state police. It means that what is the difference between the CBI and the normal police force that we see around us. And last is the CBI Academy. Okay, but here is one thing that I haven't add on here. Okay, because if we talk about the CBI in general, so that thing is not included in the CBI mandate. Alright, but remember what I'm saying. Mark my words and keep this in your mind. I'm saying when we talk about the CBI in general, then the thing that I'm going to say is not included in the mandate. But if we want to unfold the every aspects, okay, so basically that particular thing is very, very important. Okay, because remember there is a golden dialogue which I have, you can say, read it somewhere. If you want to know someone's present and if you want to know something's present, then you must be aware about the history of that particular thing. Okay, similarly, if you want to see someone's future, then you must be aware about his present. So here, if we want to understand the CBI, okay, so all right, these topics are important. Like the establishment is important, like the motto, mission and vision of CBI important, organization of CBI, the composition of CBI, the functions of CBI important, provisions of prior permission is important, CBI versus state police, the comparison is important, even the CBI Academy is important. All these are important, but which is the most important is that how the basic foundation laid down. Then after some time we had the organization like the CBI. Okay, because if we start it from the history, the basic history and the beginning, then only we will be able to grasp the facts and figures in the proper and the efficient manner. Okay, so what is that thing? That thing is going to be the background. Here you can see that I have only added the word background. I didn't say that this background is of the CBI background. Why? Because I have already told you before the beginning of this lecture. Alright, the CBI mandates does not include these things that we are going to see here. Alright, but even these things are important because if we want to get the overall approach, if we want to get the overall meaning, then it's become quite important that we must be aware about this background. Okay, so basically Let us start with the British India. We know the Britishers were out of those Europeans who came to India. First, the Portuguese came, then then the Dutch people came, then the French came, then the Britishers came. All right, and however, this is you can say still a conflict that whether the British came first and the France came first. Why? Because if you just match the timeline, so the trace of Britishers you will found at 1630. Okay, but if you try to find the connections of the French, so they also started parallelly on the same time period. Okay, but here we are going to specifically talk about the British India. So here, if we talk about the British India, then we know after the 1707, when the last Mughal ruler Aurangzeb was dead, from there till now the modern history of India starts. Okay, during this time period there was a year of 1764. That was the Battle of Buxar. Prior to this, in the 1757, there was a Battle of Plassey. Alright, in the Battle of Plassey, Nawab Sirajuddaula was killed by the Britishers and the Bengal fell under the control of the Britishers. However, not direct control. Remember what I'm saying, not direct control. Why? Because after killing the Sirajuddaula, Britishers chose Mir Jafar to put on the throne. After him, they put Mir Qasim, and then Mir Qasim along with Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor, and Soja Ud-Daula, who was the Nawab of Awadh. These three people revolted against the Britishers in the 1764, but eventually lost to the Britishers. Alright, and then we know the Britishers had established their formal rule in the Bengal for the first time, and not even in the Bengal. They had received the collection of revenue rights, the taxation rights from the Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. Okay, so these three states fall under the Britishers after the Battle of Buxar. All right, and that's how the British India started. So if we talk about the British India, so the system of Faujdars and Amil institutions were dissolved in the 1770, 6 years after the Battle of Buxar. So what were these institutions like Faujdar and the Amil institutions? So about it, we had already discussed in the history lectures, but here I'm just going to put a way forward to it. If we talk about the Faujdars, so Faujdars were basically like the today's DM, district magistrates, and even the police officers. Okay, they had the responsibility to ensure the safety and security of the citizens of that area in which they are appointed. Secondly, they were responsible to maintain the general law and order and implement the rules and regulations prescribed by the ruler. Okay, so Faujdars were like the district magistrates and the senior officers in the police. Amil institutions, if we talk about it, so Amils are basically, you can say, the taxation parts. Okay, they usually collect the taxes, okay, and then submit it to the state governments, like the provincial governments under the Mughals and the regional rulers, and then the central government. So these two institutions were having the, you can say, important implication and the significance during the medieval and the early modern India. But when Britishers came to India, all right, what they did, they first dissolved the Faujdar and the Amil institutions. Why? Because the Faujdar and the Amil institutions were, you can say, inclined towards the policies of the medieval India. And when the Britishers came to India, they had a modern ways. Okay, so these two institutions were not as per the demands of the Britishers, so that's why they dissolved them in the 1770. Then what happened? There was a person whose name was Warren Hastings. Okay, and he was the first Governor General of Bengal also. Warren Hastings did one thing, that he revived the Faujdar system in 1774. Okay, Faujdar means the person who is responsible to maintain the law and order in the area, in the state. Alright, so he revived the Faujdar system in the 1774 and enlisted the help of zamindars to combat the dacoits, violence, and disorders. So if we talk about them, if we talk about the medieval India, alright, so in medieval India we know the territories were vast, okay, very, very vast. Even if we talk about any kingdom, then kingdoms are spreading all over the area. these things are not as per the today's scenario. Like here you can see there are the organized states. Okay, every state's having a certain boundaries, and if any boundary of the state is to be altered, then there is a definite provision in the constitution. But if we talk about the medieval India, when the kingdoms were there, so there was nothing like this. Okay, like we see today. All right. So because of these loopholes, various dacoit gangs were originated on that time. Violence was common, and disorder means that the peoples were not following the rules and the regulations prescribed by the governments. Why? Because of the loose control over the governments. Okay. So that's why after the 1770, when the Amil and the Faujdar system dissolved, Warren Hastings did one thing, that he revived the Faujdar and tasked him to maintain the law and order and ensure the safety and the security of the people. Okay. Second, they enlisted the help of the zamindars. What does it mean? So if we talk about it, then we can say zamindars were like the, you can say, local leaders. Okay. If we, you can say, if we go to the medieval India, all right. So in the medieval India, the zamindars institutions were of powerful nature. All right. They had the lands of various villages. On average, a single zamindar holds 400 villages. Okay. Before the arrival of the Britishers, they were tasked by the emperors to collect the revenue from these villages and submit it back to the rulers. Okay. In exchange of it, the zamindars were allowed to maintain their personal army, their personal court of law, and maintain the general law and order in the each state they were holding it. All right. So zamindars had their private armies. So when the Warren Hastings and the Britishers came to India, the first challenge that they posed was the dacoits, violence, and disorders. Why? Because they were of the civic sense, so-called civic sense, you can say. All right. And they wanted to spread their businesses. Why? Because if you look at the history, so Britishers were never came to rule at first. They first came to do the business. Later on, due to some loopholes and due to some, you can say, internal clashes within the Indian rulers, they got succeeded in occupying the majority of the Indian subcontinent. But in initial stages, their main focus was only on trade. Okay, so these dacoits, these violence, these disorders, these things were basically, you can say, stopping them in fulfilling of their objectives. So these were become their high target. All right. So Warren Hastings revived the Faujdar and formed the team with the zamindars and their private armies to combat these. Got it? Thereafter, in 1775, Faujdar Thanas were established in larger regions, supported by smaller police stations. Like if we look at today's scenario, okay, if we look at today's scenario, so in your city in which you are living in, so there will be so many police organizations, like the commissionerate, okay, like the police stations, like the police booth, like the mobile police booth and all. So similar things were started happening on that time also. Like first the Faujdar was established or revived, not established, revived. Second, the Faujdar Thanas were established. Faujdar Thanas means that these were the offices which got established, and these had the territory over the larger regions. It means that, for example, you can say a Faujdar Thanas had 100 villages to maintain the law and order. Okay, and it is not possible that the one single Thana could maintain these areas. So that's why smaller police stations were also established. Okay, like in today's scenario, if we talk about any area, like for example, take the example of Delhi. Okay, in Delhi, if we take the example of any area, for example, the new Ashok Nagar. All right, so there was one Thana, new Ashok Nagar Thana, and this Thana had the territorial control over the new Ashok Nagar. But is it possible that the members of these Thanas could watch after each and every one? No, this is not possible. So that's why they will have the police booth and the police chowkis also. So similar things were there to support the administration and the control of these Faujdar Thanas, smaller police stations were also established. Okay, and their prime task were to look after the management of these Faujdar Thanas, report to the Faujdar Thanas if anything happens. Okay, that was a starting. After this, in 1791, the new Governor General of Bengal was appointed, whose name was Lord Cornwallis. He formed and modernized the whole Indian Thana system within districts. Like you can say, if we talk about policing, and if we talk about the police and if we talk about the police systems in India, then remember this is not the invention of the Britishers. Remember this. It was already established in India from the ancient times. Okay. If ancient times, if we talk about the ancient kingdoms like the Guptas. Okay. So the Gupta rulers had the Upharika system. Okay. The Uparikas were in charge to maintain the law and order and do the general policing. Even the same thing was happened and you can say available to the Mauryans also. Alright. So that's the same thing modified and carried forward to the medieval India during the times of Delhi Sultanate, during the times of Mughals, during the time of Marathas, okay, Sikhs, Jat rulers and all. Alright. So these things were there also. Later on, what happened when the Britishers came? So due to their internal interest, they dissolved and abolished several institutions. But later they recognized that they alone could not fight the decades, violence and disorders. So that's why they started reviving them. First, starting with the Warren Hastings, the Cornwallis also followed the same, and he just reformed and modernized as per their needs the whole Indian Thana system within the districts. Okay, like in India, we know we have the common Thana for the entire city. Okay, and Thana is commissionerate here. All right, Thanas are in every sector, in every area, but the commissionerate will be the same. And then they started appointing the Daroga. Daroga will be the Indian person who will, you can say, well aware about the locality. All right, because if we talk about the Britishers, then they are the outsiders. Okay, they did not have a much knowledge of the locality in India, the customs in India, the practices following in India. All right, even the administration, civilian and criminal, you can say, structure of the India. So that's why they appointed the Daroga, the ground worker, who will be then Indian. Okay, and he will be in charge. And after this, the superintendent of police, SP, as the head of the district police. Okay, we know if we talk about district police, so SP is the head. After, or you can say upper him, this is a SSP, senior superintendent of police. Okay, but these are in the modern times. If we talk about the, you can say, the historical point of view, so superintendent of police is the superior of the Daroga. Okay, this move aimed to establish a permanent police force to maintain the law and order and relieve zamindars from overseeing the police. Okay, so what you can say here, when the Warren Hastings established the Faujdari system, so he did a one thing, that he put the Faujdars under the controls of the zamindars. Okay, because what he thought, the zamindars are well aware about the local machineries. Even the zamindars have the control over the local villages and all. So if the zamindars will continue looking after the police force, then the administration would be well effective. But the Cornwallis thought it in the different way. He said that the zamindars should be free from overseeing the police. Why? Because there are chances that the zamindar will use this police force to fulfill their interests. Okay, so that's why instead of the older things, he just took the principles of the old Indian Thana system, but he reformed and modernized them as per the modern requirements. And then he appointed the Daroga, who will be in charge of the locality, and the superintendent of police, who will be the head of the entire district police. Okay, and because of this, a permanent police force would be established to maintain the law and order, and the zamindars would be relieving from overseeing the police. Okay, so this is the approach of the Cornwallis. So here we have seen the two approaches, Warren Hastings approach and the Cornwallis approach. Got it? Now let's move forward. After this, what happened? In 1808, Lord Mayo was the in charge of the British, and he appointed the SP, Superintendent of Police, for each district. Okay, assisted by the several spies. Spies goendas. Okay, even if we talk about the spy system, that the spy system was already existing in India from the ancient times. Okay, like if you have ever heard the name of Chanakya. Chanakya was the political and economical advisor to whom Chandragupta Maurya, all right, and later to the Bindusar and the Ashoka, all right, for some time. So the Chanakya had already maintained the system of spies. The same system, you can say, carried forward to the Guptas, okay, and then to the medieval India by the Ghiyasuddin Balban, who was the ruler of the Ilbari tribes, and then the Alauddin Khilji, who was the ruler of Khilji dynasty. And the same system carried forward even to the Vijayanagar Empire, which is the mightiest empire of the South India during the medieval times. And the similar system was revived by the Lord Mayo. Okay. And these had a duty to assist the superintendent of police. Okay. And here, if you're talking about it, so let me tell you one thing. This is, you can say, out of the box. All right. There is a famous book, The Confession of Thugs. What is the name of that book? The Confession of Thugs. And who wrote this book? Phillips Mathews Taylor. Okay, he was even the police officer during the British time. So you could read that book so that you will get an idea that what were the situations in India on that time. Regarding the thuggy, regarding the dacoiting, regarding the stealing and all. Alright. So that's why it's became important for the Britishers to control the things. Otherwise, they will not be able to sustain their own foods on the soil for a long duration. Okay. However, these spies often preyed on local citizens. It means that these spies had a prior responsibility to look after the local citizens. Okay, not on the Britishers. In 1814, the Court of Directors ordered the discontinuation of Daroga appointments and their subordinates in all companies areas except the Bengal. Okay, so here we can say in 1814 there was a Charter Act of 1813 basically. In 1813 the Charter Act was passed and the new office of Court of Directors were established. Okay, and these Court of Directors got the administrative works from the East India Company and the economical works given to the East India Company from this act. So basically, after the appointment, what they did, they said that Daroga appointments and the subordinates appointments in the areas ruling by the company, by the East India Company, that will be discontinued. Why? Because there were multiple complaints received by the Britishers from the East India Company. Like they were using the you can say the Daroga appointments and the subordinates in inappropriate way. The main aim behind establishing them is to maintain the general law and order, but the East India Company was using them against the local citizens and to fulfill their interest of earning profits. So that's why all the areas were given to the Court of Directors except the Bengal. Okay. After this, Lord William Bentinck, he abolishes the SP office, designating the commissioner in each division as the SP. Okay, and placing the district police under the collector and the magistrate controls. So, if we look at the today's governance system of each and every district, so that is very much similar to the system introduced by the Lord William Bentinck. Okay, like he established the commissioner and the commissionerate in the each division as the SP, and then district police put under the control of the collector and the magistrates. This system led to a poorly organized police force, overburdening the collector and magistrate. Presidency towns were the first to separate the roles of collectors and magistrates. Okay, it means that the thing that he tried to do was to more organize the forces, but due to this, what happened? The collectorates and the magistrates who had nothing to do with the police force, they had got the charge of the police force and maintaining the law and order. Okay, so due to this, there was a situation of overburdenness on the organization. Got it? After this, what happened? The Government of India Act 1858, that was passed after the famous revolt of 1857, and the Police Act of 1861. Standardized police administration in British India came to the picture, establishing the Indian Imperial Police, also known as Indian Police, or after 1905, the Imperial Police. Okay, it means that prior to this, there was just a system and there were just steps to revive the system that already existed in India. But the Britishers felt that they were not so much familiar with the system that prevailed in India. They were not so much familiar with the steps that needed to be taken in order to governing the Indian states. So that's why they just tried to do some experiments, and most of the experiments got failed. Okay, so their dream of standardization and maintaining the general law and order was not so successful. So that's why in eventually you can say they had passed the Government of India Act 1858 and the Police Act of 1861. And these two acts basically established the standardized police administration in British India. Okay, and that was known as the Indian Imperial Police. Another name was Imperial Police, but after 1905, the single name remained, that was the Imperial Police. Okay. In 1902, the Police Commission recommended creating a Central Intelligence Bureau at the central level and Criminal Investigation Department CID in each province. Alright, Police Commission, 1902. So these two organizations were also established to maintain the general law and order and to govern the Indian state in the effective and efficient manner. Okay, so students, basically in this lecture we had finished till here. Like we had seen the background part, and you can say that is the basic foundation on which the policing system was established in India in the modern sense. And from here, the policing system continued till the, you can say, today's scenario. And even in between of this journey, the Central Bureau of Investigation came to the picture. So everything starts from here. All right. That's why I told you that it is very, very important that we must be aware about this thing. Now, by reading these things, you can say you have make up your mind, okay, about the CBI. And now you will find it more interesting that how does the normal policing establish, why the Britishers felt that the things to be changed, and why the Central Bureau of Investigation, like the organization of that name, finally established in India, and why it is the prestigious organization in the case of policing investigation, and why whenever any case came which is having of the tricky nature, why the investigation of CBI demanded. Okay, so this series is going to be a very, very interesting series. So I hope that you will revise this lecture in the well enough manner before you have come for this lecture. And with this note, let's end this lecture. Okay, and what we say in the end, we say thank you.